Samantha Halston sat across from her husband, Greg, as the soft glow of candlelight flickered between them. It was their weekly date night, an attempt to reignite the spark that had dimmed over the last year. Yet tonight, Greg seemed distracted, his gaze occasionally drifting to his phone before returning to Samantha with an unreadable expression. "Is something on your mind?" Samantha asked, swirling her wine glass. Greg hesitated, running a hand through his sandy blonde hair. "Actually, there is," he admitted. "I've been thinking a lot about us lately. About how we've been kind of stuck." Samantha raised an eyebrow. "Stuck? You know, in a rut," Greg clarified, his tone cautious. "I mean, don't you feel like something's missing? Like our marriage isn't as exciting as it used to be?" Samantha frowned, setting her glass down. "Every marriage has its ups and downs, Greg. But I thought we were working on it. Isn't that what these date nights are for?" "Yeah, but—" Greg sighed, leaning back in his chair. "What if there's another way to shake things up? Something a little unconventional?" Samantha's stomach tightened as Greg's words hung in the air. "What are you saying?" she asked, her voice wary. Greg hesitated again before leaning forward, his elbows resting on the table. "What if we tried an open marriage?" The words hit Samantha like a slap. She blinked, unsure if she had heard him correctly. "An open marriage?" "Yeah," Greg said quickly, his tone almost eager. "I've been reading about it, how some couples use it to explore new things, keep their relationship exciting. It's not about replacing what we have, Sam. It's about adding to it." Samantha's heart pounded in her chest. "Greg, are you serious? You want to bring other people into our marriage?" "I'm just saying we should consider it," Greg said defensively. "Think about it. No pressure. We've been together for 10 years, Sam. Maybe a little freedom could bring us closer." Samantha couldn't hide the hurt in her eyes as she stared at him. "Closer? How does sleeping with other people make us closer, Greg?" Greg reached across the table, his expression earnest. "It's not just about sex. It's about trust, about being open with each other. Look, if you're not comfortable with it, we don't have to do anything. But at least think about it, okay?" Samantha nodded numbly, her appetite gone. She spent the rest of the evening in a haze, trying to wrap her mind around Greg's suggestion. That night, as they lay in bed, Samantha couldn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling, her mind racing. Greg's words had struck a nerve she didn't even know existed. Was he bored with her? Did he find her lacking? Or was this just a passing phase, a misguided attempt to fix something that wasn't even broken? The idea of an open marriage made her stomach churn, but another part of her, the part that feared losing Greg, wondered if refusing would only drive him further away. By morning, she had made a decision. "Greg," Samantha said over breakfast, her voice trembling slightly, "if this is something you really want to try, I'll consider it." Greg's eyes lit up with surprise and relief. "You will?" Samantha nodded, forcing a smile. "But we need ground rules, clear boundaries, and we have to agree on everything before we start." "Absolutely," Greg said eagerly. "We'll figure it all out together." "Thank you, Sam. You don't know how much this means to me." Over the next few days, they hashed out the details. No one-night stands, no secrets, and, most importantly, their marriage would always come first. Samantha clung to the hope that these rules would keep them anchored, that they would prevent this experiment from spiraling out of control. But deep down, a voice whispered that she was opening a door that could never be closed. Samantha had hoped that setting boundaries would give her a sense of control, a way to keep Greg's proposition from unraveling their lives. But the reality of their open arrangement proved more complicated than she'd imagined. Greg threw himself into it with an enthusiasm that left Samantha reeling. Within a week, he had set up a dating profile and started going out several nights a week. Each time, he returned with a glow she hadn't seen in years, his smile wider, his laughter easier. Samantha, on the other hand, struggled to participate. She created a profile, swapped a few messages, and even agreed to a coffee date, but her heart wasn't in it. She found herself comparing every potential match to Greg and wondering if he was doing the same with her. One evening, as Greg was getting ready to go out, Samantha sat on the edge of their bed, her stomach churning. "Where are you going tonight?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "Just meeting someone for drinks," Greg replied, adjusting his shirt in the mirror. "Who?" "Her name's Tessa," Greg said, glancing at her reflection. "We've been chatting for a couple of days. She seems cool." Samantha forced a smile, her throat tightening. "Well, have fun." Greg hesitated, turning to her. "Are you okay with this? I mean, really okay?" Samantha nodded, her smile brittle. "Of course. This was my choice too, remember?" But as the door closed behind Greg, Samantha felt a wave of regret. She hated how easily he seemed to slip into this new dynamic while she was left feeling exposed and uncertain. She spent the evening scrolling through her phone, trying to distract herself. But when a notification from Greg's dating profile popped up, one she'd forgotten to mute, her curiosity got the better of her. The message was from Tessa. "Tessa, I had an amazing time last night. Can't wait to see you again tonight. Smiley face." Samantha's heart sank. Greg had been out with Tessa the night before. He hadn't mentioned that. She had assumed this was their first meeting, but clearly she had been wrong. By the time Greg came home, Samantha was simmering with a mix of anger and insecurity. "How was your night?" she asked, her tone sharper than intended. Greg hesitated, his cheerful demeanor faltering. "It was good. Tessa's great, really fun to talk to." Samantha crossed her arms, her gaze piercing. "Why didn't you tell me you'd already seen her last night?" Greg blinked, caught off guard. "I didn't think it was a big deal. We just grabbed coffee yesterday. Nothing serious." "Nothing serious?" Samantha repeated, her voice rising. "You said we'd be honest with each other, Greg. But you're already keeping things from me." "I'm not keeping anything from you," Greg said defensively. "I just didn't think you needed a play-by-play of everything." "That's exactly what we agreed to," Samantha snapped. "No secrets, remember?" Greg sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Okay, I'm sorry. I should have told you. But Sam, this was your idea too. You said you'd give this a chance." Samantha's chest tightened as his words hit her. He was right. She had agreed to this, hoping it would bring them closer. But instead, it felt like Greg was slipping further away. The following weeks only deepened her doubts. Greg continued seeing Tessa regularly, while Samantha struggled to connect with anyone. She went on a few dates, but couldn't shake the feeling that she was competing with Greg, and she always came up short. Worse, Greg's behavior began to change. He started coming home later, spending more time on his phone, and showing less interest in their shared life. Samantha tried to talk to him, but he brushed her off, insisting that everything was fine. One night, as Samantha lay awake in bed, Greg's phone buzzed on the nightstand. She hesitated, guilt gnawing at her, but curiosity and suspicion won out. The message was from Tessa. "Tessa, I miss you already. Wish you didn't have to leave tonight. Love." Samantha's breath caught, her chest tightening. She stared at the message, her mind racing. Greg had told her he was with a friend from work that evening, but now she knew the truth. When Greg came to bed a few minutes later, Samantha confronted him. "Who's Tessa to you, Greg?" she asked, her voice trembling. Greg froze, his expression shifting to guilt. Samantha, don't lie to me, she snapped, sitting up. You said we'd be honest, but you've been sneaking around with her behind my back. So tell me the truth. What is this to you? Greg sighed, sitting on the edge of the bed. I don't know, he admitted. Tessa's different. She makes me feel alive again. How do you think cheating affects not just the couple, but everyone around them? Write in the comments. Sam. Like I'm not just a husband stuck in a routine. Samantha's heart broke at his words. And I don't make you feel alive? It's not about you, Greg said quickly. It's about me. Look, this was supposed to be something we did together. But if it's not working for you, maybe we should stop. Samantha stared at him, her emotions warring inside her. Stop? Greg, you're the one who's taken this too far. I agreed to this because I thought it would help us, but all it's done is push you closer to her and further away from me. Greg sighed, running a hand through his hair. I don't know what you want me to say, Sam. I want you to choose, Samantha said, her voice trembling. Me or her? Greg hesitated, and in that moment, Samantha felt her world crumble. The man she had loved for over a decade was slipping through her fingers, and she didn't know if she had the strength to hold on. The silence in the bedroom was suffocating. Samantha's ultimatum hung in the air, her heart pounding as she waited for Greg to respond. He sat on the edge of the bed, his head in his hands. The man who had once been her rock now seemed like a stranger, distant and torn. Sam, he said finally, his voice low and strained. I don't know if I can give you the answer you want right now. Samantha's stomach dropped, and tears stung her eyes. What do you mean you don't know? You're my husband, Greg. How is this even a question? Greg looked up at her, his face etched with guilt. I don't want to lose you, he said softly. But I don't know how to let go of this connection I have with Tessa. It's not something I planned, Sam. It just happened. Samantha stared at him, her chest tightening with a mix of anger and heartbreak. So you're saying you'd rather keep her than fight for us? No, Greg said quickly. That's not what I'm saying. This whole thing has made me realize how much I've been missing, Sam. How much I've been craving something different. And I'm not enough? Samantha asked, her voice trembling. Greg hesitated, his silence louder than any words. That hesitation was all Samantha needed. She stood abruptly, tears streaming down her face. I can't believe this, she said, her voice breaking. I agreed to this stupid open marriage because I thought it would make you happy, because I thought it would bring us closer. And now you're telling me I'm not enough for you? Greg stood too, reaching for her, but she stepped back. Sam, please. This isn't about you. It's about me. About what I need. What you need. Samantha repeated bitterly. What about what we need, Greg? What about our marriage? I'm trying to figure it out, Greg said, his voice rising. But you're putting me in an impossible position. No, Greg, Samantha snapped. You put yourself in this position. You opened the door to this, and now you're trying to act like you're the victim. Samantha stormed out of the bedroom, slamming the door behind her. She spent the rest of the night on the couch, her mind racing with anger and pain. The man she had trusted with her heart had betrayed her in the worst way, not just with another woman, but with his indifference to the life they had built together. The next morning, Greg left for work without a word. Samantha couldn't bring herself to look at him, let alone speak to him. Over the next few days, the distance between them grew. Greg continued seeing Tessa, spending less and less time at home. Samantha tried to distract herself with work and friends, but nothing could dull the ache in her chest. One evening, as Samantha sat alone in the living room, her phone buzzed with a text. It was from Greg. Greg, Can we talk when I get home? I think we need to figure out where we go from here. Samantha stared at the message, her hands trembling. She knew what figure out meant. He was going to make a choice, and she wasn't sure she wanted to hear it. When Greg arrived home, Samantha was waiting for him in the kitchen. Her arms were crossed, her expression guarded. What do you want to talk about? She asked coldly. Greg hesitated, his gaze dropping to the floor. I've been thinking a lot about us, he said, about everything that's happened. And? Samantha prompted, her voice icy. And I think maybe we've outgrown each other, Greg said quietly. Samantha felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. Outgrown each other? She repeated, her voice trembling. That's what this is to you. Greg sighed, running a hand through his hair. Sam, I love you. I always will. But I don't think I can give you what you need anymore. And I don't think you can give me what I need. Samantha's hands clenched into fists, her anger boiling over. You mean Tessa? She snapped. You think she can give you what you need? Greg didn't deny it. It's not just about her, he said. It's about realizing that maybe we've been holding on to something that isn't working anymore. Samantha stared at him, her chest tight with rage and heartbreak. So that's it? She said bitterly. You're just going to throw away 10 years of marriage? Walk away from everything we built together? I don't want to hurt you, Sam, Greg said softly. But staying together when we're both unhappy, that's not fair to either of us. Samantha shook her head, tears streaming down her face. You're unbelievable, she said, her voice breaking. I gave you everything, Greg. I loved you, supported you, stood by you. And this is how you repay me. I'm sorry, Greg said, his voice trembling. I really am. But I think this is the best thing for both of us. Samantha couldn't believe what she was hearing. The man she had built her life around was walking away, leaving her shattered and alone. As Greg packed a bag and left that night, Samantha sat on the floor of the living room, sobbing into her hands. She had agreed to an open marriage, thinking it would bring them closer. Instead, it had torn them apart. The days following Greg's departure were a haze of pain and disbelief for Samantha. She wandered through their home like a ghost, every room a painful reminder of the life they had built together, the life he had so easily walked away from. Friends and family called to check on her, their voices filled with concern, but Samantha couldn't bring herself to answer most of the time. The effort of explaining what had happened felt like too much. The hardest part was telling their parents. Samantha's mother, always diplomatic, had been supportive but cautious. Take time to grieve, she'd said. But don't let him take your strength, Sam. You're still standing, and that counts for something. Her father had been less measured. That man doesn't deserve another second of your thoughts, he had growled. Let him have his fling. He'll regret it. Despite their reassurances, Samantha felt adrift. She had spent 10 years as Greg's wife, building their life together, shaping her identity around their partnership. Now, without him, she wasn't sure who she was anymore. One evening, as she sat on the couch staring at a blank TV screen, her best friend Maya called. This time, Samantha picked up. Finally, Maya said, her voice brimming with warmth and frustration. Do you know how many times I've called you this week? I'm sorry, Samantha murmured. I've just been trying to figure things out. Well, figuring things out doesn't mean isolating yourself, Maya said firmly. Come over tomorrow. No excuses. I'm making brunch, and you're going to eat something other than cereal for once. The next morning, Samantha found herself sitting at Maya's kitchen table, a steaming plate of pancakes in front of her. This is nice, Samantha admitted, taking a sip of coffee. I didn't realize how much I needed this. Of course you needed this, Maya said, sitting across from her. You've been through hell, Sam, but you don't have to go through it alone. Samantha hesitated, then said, It's just, everything feels so pointless. I gave Greg everything I had, and it still wasn't enough. What does that say about me? It says more about him than it does about you, Maya said firmly. He's the one who broke your trust, not the other way around. And if he couldn't see how amazing you are, then that's his loss. Maya's words stayed with Samantha as she returned home later that day. She stood in the doorway, looking around at the life she and Greg had built together. It was painful, but it was also hers. For the first time in weeks, Samantha felt a flicker of resolve. She couldn't change what Greg had done or the choices he had made, but she could decide how to move forward. Samantha began by reclaiming her space. She packed up Greg's remaining belongings and left them by the door, sending him a curt message to pick them up. She rearranged the furniture, swapped out the photos of their wedding for pictures of her friends and family, and painted the walls a new color. It wasn't much, but it felt like a start. She also threw herself into her work, taking on new projects and reconnecting with colleagues she'd lost touch with. Her boss, impressed by her newfound drive, offered her a promotion she had been passed over for the year before. Are you sure you can handle the workload? He asked during their meeting. I can handle anything, Samantha replied with a confidence she hadn't felt in years. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. Late at night, when the house was quiet and the weight of loneliness pressed down on her, Samantha found herself scrolling through old photos of her and Greg, wondering where it had all gone wrong. She couldn't help but check his social media occasionally, hoping to find some clue that he was miserable without her. Instead, she saw pictures of him and Tessa, smiling, carefree, as though the past 10 years had never existed. The sight was like a dagger to the heart. Maya noticed Samantha's struggle during one of their weekly get-togethers. You've got to stop torturing yourself, Maya said, snatching Samantha's phone. Greg made his choice. Now it's time for you to make yours. What choice do I have? Samantha asked, her voice tinged with despair. He's moved on, and I'm just here. You have every choice, Sam, Maya said. You can rebuild your life. Find out who you are without him. Hell, maybe even find someone who actually deserves you. Samantha shook her head. I can't even imagine dating again. Then don't, Maya said. Focus on you. Figure out what makes you happy. Over the next few months, Samantha took Maya's advice to heart. Would you end things immediately or try to work things out? Write in the comments. Joined a hiking club, started painting again, a hobby she'd abandoned years ago, and even took a solo trip to the mountains, something she'd always wanted to do but had never found the time for. Each step felt small, but together they formed a path toward healing. Months had passed since Greg walked out of Samantha's life. What had initially felt like an endless void of despair slowly began to transform into something unexpected, a sense of liberation. Samantha was no longer defined by the titles of wife or partner. Instead, she began to focus on herself, rediscovering the pieces of her identity that had been buried beneath the compromises of marriage. One Saturday morning, Samantha stood in her newly repainted living room, gazing at the fresh gallery wall she had created. Each frame held a snapshot of her recent journey, a picture from her solo trip to the mountains, a photo of her laughing with Maya over brunch, and a print of her first completed painting in years. The space no longer felt like a reminder of what she had lost. Instead, it was a testament to what she had gained. Her career had flourished, too. With her promotion, Samantha found herself in charge of a team for the first time. The responsibility was daunting, but it gave her a renewed sense of purpose. She thrived on the challenges, throwing herself into each project with a determination that left her colleagues impressed. At the end of a particularly grueling week, her boss pulled her aside. "I have to say, Samantha, the way you've stepped up these past few months has been incredible," he said. "I don't know what changed, but it's working for you." Samantha smiled, the compliment landing more meaningfully than she expected. "Thank you," she said simply. "I think I just stopped holding myself back." But it wasn't just work and hobbies that had shifted for Samantha, it was her mindset. She stopped checking Greg's social media, deleted the lingering photos of him from her phone, and returned the last of his things without ceremony. When she thought of him now, it was with a mix of sadness and acceptance. He had chosen a different path, and for all the pain it had caused, it had also given her the chance to find herself again. One evening, while Samantha was scrolling through a local events page, she came across a listing for a community art show. It was open to amateur artists, and the deadline for submissions was just a few days away. At first, she hesitated. The idea of putting her work on display for others to see felt intimidating. But Maya's voice echoed in her mind. "Figure out what makes you happy." With a deep breath, Samantha submitted one of her paintings, a vibrant landscape inspired by her trip to the mountains. The night of the show, Samantha arrived at the gallery feeling a mix of excitement and nerves. She wandered through the space, admiring the work of other local artists, until she found her painting hanging on the wall. A small card next to it read, "Mountain Solace," by Samantha Halston. For the first time in months, Samantha felt a surge of pride. This was hers, a piece of herself she had reclaimed and shared with the world. As she stood there, a man approached her. He was tall, with kind eyes and a warm smile. "Is this yours?" he asked, gesturing to the painting. Samantha nodded, her cheeks flushing. "It is. It's incredible," he said, studying it thoughtfully. "There's so much emotion in it. You must have been feeling something pretty powerful when you painted it." Samantha hesitated before replying. "I was," she admitted. "It's about finding peace after a storm." The man smiled. "You captured it beautifully." They talked for a while, and for the first time in a long time, Samantha felt a spark, not just of attraction, but of possibility. That night, as she drove home, Samantha reflected on how far she had come. She had faced heartbreak, betrayal, and the dissolution of a life she had spent a decade building. But she had also found strength, resilience, and a renewed sense of self. Her life wasn't what she had imagined it would be, but it was hers. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough.